God deals with individuals in Israel. Huh. Huh. Huh.
All right, so I want y'all to listen to this little clip with John Piper. And for those of you who don't know, here at Be Berean, we believe in corporate election. This is a short video, and at the end of this video, I'm going to give an analogy that's going to make it very easy to understand exactly what corporate election teaches. And you'll be able to decide for yourself whether or not John Piper knows what he's talking about, or whether he's just crafting a straw man, a version of corporate election that's easier to defeat and defeating that version. Just listen.
So many scholar types say that we TGCW types are way too individualistic in our thinking about salvation. You don't grasp corporate realities, corporate categories in the Bible, which are everywhere and all important. You make salvation way too much a matter of the individual heart.
Now, do we believe that? Do we believe that Calvinism, Arminianism makes salvation too much about the individual, too much about the individual heart? Of course not. Corporate election teaches that salvation is all about the individual. And this comment right here proves that John Piper either doesn't know what he's talking about, or he's intentionally misrepresenting us.
This text is radically focused on the individual, over against the corporate, pointing out the danger of corporate thinking.
Corporate thinking is dangerous, guys. I mean, we should stay away from it. We shouldn't even consider it. It is dangerous. I mean, what if I were to get on here and say, Calvinism is dangerous, guys, because Calvinism teaches that God determines all things that come to pass, and that includes even the evil in the world. You know, that would be a true statement of Calvinism. And John Piper's coming on here and saying that corporate election is dangerous. But the reason that he gives as to why it's dangerous is not even an accurate representation of what we believe, as you'll see in just a minute. But just listen.
Safety in my corporateness. That's the danger. I would venture to say, not in the text, an opinion. I would venture to say there are vastly more people in hell today because of the false securities of corporate thinking than there are in hell today because of over-individualizing the doctrine of salvation. No question in my mind about that.
Now, I thought that on Calvinism, God determines all things that come to pass. So wouldn't that include the teaching of corporate election? Wouldn't that mean that God is using corporate election, this dangerous view, as a means to bring about the ends of his sovereign and unchangeable decree to save his elect? Wouldn't that be the reason why there are so many people separated from God for eternity, for believing this dangerous idea? Or do the people that teach corporate election, do they determine that thing? And God just determines all other things that come to pass?
Millions upon millions of people.
Millions upon millions of people that are not saved because of this dangerous idea of corporate election. That just doesn't make rational sense to me, but that's just a little side note, a little rabbit trail.
Led to destruction because they belonged to some institution. Don't let anybody give you mumbo jumbo about the Bible not prioritizing the individual when it comes to getting saved.
Corporate election is just mumbo jumbo. There's nothing to it. It's not worth looking into. They definitely don't teach that salvation is individual in any way. It's just safety in your corporateness. Okay, let's take a look at this and let's discover for ourselves. I want you to decide for yourself whether John Piper knows what he's talking about. The first thing I want to do is go to Ephesians 1 here and just show you that in verse 4, when it says, even as he chose us in him, that the us here that it's referring to believers in Christ, the faithful in Christ. Okay, that's who Paul is speaking to. And so when he says he chose us in him, he's simply saying he chose the faithful in him, or believers in Christ. So we believe that chosen simply means God's chosen people. Okay, in the Old Covenant and the New, true Israel has always been those who have the faith of Abraham. Okay, so Galatians 3:9, so then those who are of faith are blessed along with Abraham, the man of faith. We believe predestination is about individual salvation, and I'm going to explain that in just a minute. But we believe God predestines those who have faith in Christ to be adopted as sons. Not that he predestines us to be sons, as Calvinists like to understand it. He chose us, believers in him, Christ, to be holy and blameless. Not that he chose us to be in Christ. We believe we are chosen, i.e., become one of God's chosen people, when we place our faith in Christ. And the decision that those who place their faith in Christ will be holy and blameless was made before the foundation of the world. Okay, so I want to give you this analogy to help you understand where we're coming from. The founding fathers chose us in America before the foundation of the country that we should have freedom and liberty. Now, this is a true statement, and we as Americans can understand how this applies to us today because we intuitively understand the concept of corporate election. The founding fathers weren't choosing individuals to be citizens, but rather they were choosing that all within the corporation of America, citizens, should have freedom and liberty. The founding fathers chose us, citizens in America, before the foundation of the country, that we, citizens, should have freedom and liberty. Now, in the same way, he chose us, believers in him, before the foundation of the world, that we, believers, should be holy and blameless. Now, staying consistent with the analogy, God was not choosing individuals to be believers. Rather, he was choosing that all within the corporation of Christ, believers, should be holy and blameless. So we absolutely believe in individual salvation, and that corporate election is all about individual salvation. All it's saying is that God made a decision before the foundation of the world that all those who find themselves within that corporation of Christ, so there is safety in our corporation. There is safety in our corporateness. If our corporateness is Christ, okay, we have safety in the corporation of Christ. And we are individually chosen when we place our faith in Christ in real time. We become God's chosen people. It is a real personal choosing and salvation experience. We simply don't believe that God was choosing who was going to be within the corporation of Christ before the foundation of the world. Paul says that every spiritual blessing is ours when we are in Christ. He's blessed us, the faithful, in Christ with every spiritual blessing. This is perfectly consistent with corporate election. We are not chosen until we place our faith in Christ. But if Calvinism is true, that means that God chose us in Christ. Okay, so when we have faith in Christ, that's what in Christ means. That would mean that God chose us in Christ, but that this was before we had faith in Christ. And that's what we're trying to push back on, is that Calvinism is teaching that we have a spiritual blessing of being chosen before we have faith in Christ, when Paul says that every spiritual blessing is only ours when we're in Christ, and then gives being chosen as an example of a spiritual blessing. Okay, that's just a blatant contradiction. And so I just wanted to share this video with you just to show that these mainstream Calvinists, I don't know what's going on with them. I really don't. And I really don't want to think that they're all just being deceptive about this and they really know what we believe and they're not being honest. I really don't want to think that. But I don't know what's going on, because obviously Piper does not understand what we believe. And for him to get up there and speak out against our belief system as if it's dangerous without even understanding what it is that we believe is extremely irresponsible. And so I'm just calling him out on that and leaving it up to you to decide for yourself whether he understands our view, whether he knows what he's talking about. So thank you for watching. Hope you have a great day. God bless.